Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's chat about the silent crisis of disengagement. Honestly, it's time to sound the alarm. There's no doubt about it that we're in a silent crisis of disengagement. And today we want to chat about what are we seeing, why are we seeing it, and what we can do about it, of course, because this is an imperative that's required for all of us to focus on how do we solve this crisis that we're seeing where people feel disengaged, not motivated, not inspired to show up every day and do the best work of their life. And we know that solving that has huge ramifications for the future of your business. So we want to help you on that journey. And I'm Robin Daniels. I'm the Chief Business Officer here at Zensai, and I'm here with Andy Roberts, who is our Chief Product Officer. And today we're going to walk you through what we're seeing, why we're seeing it, and what we can do about it. It's going to be a conversation between Andy and I, but we're also going to walk you through some of the things that we're seeing. So welcome, and I hope you engage with us. One of the things that we're seeing is, of course, that employee engagement is at a 10-year low. And this trend is not going in the right direction. So it's obvious that even though if you ask most CEOs, most executives, what matters most, they say their employees matter most. But because they don't really have tools and understanding of how to engage those employees end up not really being motivated to do great work. And we know that an organization is just a collection of people trying to do great work together. Sometimes that's some small things you're trying to solve, and sometimes those things are a little bit bigger. But unless you figure out a way to motivate, inspire, engage your employees, those employees are not showing up every day doing the best work. We see here from the data from Gallup that only 32%, think about that, only 32% of employees were engaged at work. That means that 2/3 of your workforce, or maybe our workforce too, are not engaged in work. And if we want to really solve these bigger challenges that we have to figure out how do we do that? And we have to dig deep to do so. And so when we think about, this trend, honestly, it's nothing new. That's why I'm saying it's really time to dig deep and maybe think about things differently, because every year we see the same trends over and over and over again. Yet we know that solving this deep crisis has huge impact for the organization. We know that employees who are motivated, inspired, and engaged, they show up every single day and they contribute more innovative, more groundbreaking ideas for the organization. And of course, you need that if you're going to think about growth or new markets or new products and so on. And we also know that organizations who have highly engaged employees, who have figured out how to really motivate those employees and give them clarity on their future and their jobs to be done, those companies also see a higher increase in profitability. So it's a no-brainer that we have to solve this. But if you don't have the tools or the skills and understanding of how to solve it, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And so we believe that we're really witnessing this people revolution that's really profound. It can't be understated enough, because when you think about the most important asset that you have in a business, 70% of most costs within a business are focused on people costs. And if we're not getting the most out of those people, we're really missing something. And so we believe that we're in this profound change in the world where we're witnessing a people revolution, where the first generation of thinking around HR or people was really focused on taking care of the basic needs that those people had. We call it like HR 1.0. And it's super important, of course, because making sure that people get paid, that they take their vacation, that they get their benefits and so on, super important. Honestly, it's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and it's not going away anytime soon. But we also know that it's not enough just to focus on those things to inspire people to do the best work of their lives. We kind of started realizing this probably 20, 30 years ago, and we thought, let's change it up a little bit. Let's change HR, because it sounds a little rough and outdated, to something a little bit more modern and inspiring. Let's call it people and culture. Let's hire a chief people officer to solve this. And let's turn the office into kind of this playground where there's kombucha on tap, free pizza, lots of social activities. The office is kind of cool suddenly. And I was at the forefront of this trend, of course. I was the chief marketing officer at a company called WeWork, which was all about making sure that when people showed up at work, it wasn't a soul-sucking experience, but actually providing inspiration and motivation for those people to come together and do great work together. And it did help a little bit, but it didn't really solve the underlying deep-seated need that we all have for doing great work that's motivational and inspiring and progresses us towards a future that's better for us and also the businesses that we work for.
Quite interesting, Robin, that you were at the forefront of Gen 2 here.
I know.
It's interesting, obviously, so you know it better than anybody. But what would you say? What would you say is the next stage from your perspective?
Well, what's interesting, like so this. Yeah, I mean, I spent 20 years of my career in Silicon Valley companies, and a lot of that thinking was around, can we get people together and kind of make the office kind of a campus style like it is in a university? I'm very inspired by that, where people are spending a lot of time together and all their kind of needs are taken care of. And we do that in a social way where people, of course, get to know each other. And it does help, of course, once you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, that sense of belonging is really important for you to show up and do great work every day. But when you look at the data why most people are disengaged, it also says that it's because they feel like they don't have the mentorship or coaching. They don't feel like they're progressing in any way towards a career that's inspiring for them. And so what we're seeing now here in 2025 is that the future has to be focused on something radically different, not just slightly different, but radically different. And we call this human success. And we believe that the future is about making sure that every single human being who works in your organization is empowered to succeed every single day. What does that mean? That means that they have the skills, the knowledge, the motivation that they need in order to do a great job, not just today, but also for the future. So they have clarity around what they need to achieve. They have continuous opportunities for growth and learning. They have a career path that's inspiring for them, not just that puts them on a path that's kind of standard for everybody, but something that's inspiring for them personally, and where they have that deep engagement every single day, not just in the work that they're doing, but also in the team that they're working with, making sure that you have people on your side, you're belonging to something that's greater than yourself. Once you crack the code on that, you unleash a power and energy that's completely unstoppable. And especially then when you add in the coaching and mentoring element, because we all have growth opportunities. I've been working for over 25 years in my life, but I can still learn a lot every single day. So having those coaches and mentors in my life that pushes me in a certain direction is really important. And everybody says that over and over. The data shows that when people have coaches and mentors on their side to inspire and motivate them, they end up doing greater work every single day. So very, very exciting for sure. And so we have to solve this. And what that looks like is really around, can we think about how do we engage people deeply? How do we make them perform at a level that's great today, but also even growing for the future? And how do we ensure that those people are also learning the skills that they need in a time of rapid change? Think about how fast things are changing, especially in the age of AI, that they don't just have the skills today to be successful, but also for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years and so on. So learning and growth and development is all important. And on their own, engagement is important, learning is important, making sure you hit your goals are really important. But when they come together, that's when the magic happens, because then suddenly you have an employee or a team that's performing at the highest level and highly motivated for the future of their business. And that's why, of course, Andy and I are so passionate about this, why Andy, we ended up partnering up together on building a company around solving these three things, because once they come together, they're all important. Andy, I know you created a company a couple of years ago called Weekly 10 that was all about solving this. Tell me a little bit about like what started this and why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, and I think the key thing here is, and you've just talked about it in terms of human success, is there's a real balance between the needs of the employee and the needs of the organization. And when you can balance those in the right way, you get the best outcomes in terms of making sure that actually you're delivering for the employees' growth, their performance, both inside the organization and down the line, but also you're delivering for the organization. You marry those together, and you by far get the best outcomes. Weekly 10, the company I founded a few years back, was really based around the notion of providing managers, particularly, and employees with the tools to be able to have better conversations and increase levels of engagement and levels of performance in doing so. Because one of the key elements of that approach is that if you can normalize feedback, you can normalize conversation around these areas, then actually you get much better outcomes. One of the biggest challenges for managers is having those frank, honest conversations. And in turn, that employees can actually take feedback in a constructive way. And that was really the basis of Weekly 10, which of course later became part of our human success platform, and marrying together learning, engagement, performance in one place, so that actually you can be supported across all three of those aspects of human success.
Let's stay on that word for a second, outcomes. It's so important and it's talked about so much. And one of the things I'm seeing when I go and have conversations with business leaders all across the world is that they fundamentally know that investing in people is a smart thing to do. It's a good thing that pays off in the future. But then the question always becomes, well, can we prove what I'm going to get out of it? If I'm going to spend all this time and effort and money investing in people, what am I going to get out of it? And that's a really hard thing to answer. And it's something that we're very passionate about solving. I know, Andy, you've been working hard with the team on figuring out ways to solve this as well. But outcomes and the whole notion of the future of human success or how HR is evolving is that you have to be able to tie investing in people and their growth and development to business outcomes. And if you can't do that, I think we're going to stay stuck in a HR 1.0 mentality. So we have to do this. It's not a nice to have anymore, because it's what the CEO will ask, the CFO, the board will ask, and so on. So I'd love, as we go through today, hear your thoughts as well, Andy, on how you're thinking about this word outcomes.
Yeah, 100%. I think there are a few things that that help respond to what we talked about in terms of the levels of disengagement today. I think there are a few clear steps that you can take. I think the first area is around role clarity and alignment, and it'd be great to dig in with you, Robin, on these specific areas and the areas that we talk to customers about, but also that we focus on at Zensai as well internally. I think the first one really around that role clarity and alignment is around those conversations. I talked about when I founded Weekly 10, that all being about breaking down barriers to good conversations and effective conversations. And I think one of the key things you can do here in terms of that alignment and transparency is make sure there's a very clear goal set, and that you have goals set in a way which really is about aligning those needs of the organization and the individual. So making sure you have professional and personal goals in place. Marrying that together with what was the basis of Weekly 10, which is the check-ins, which is all focusing around surfacing the challenges that you may have as an individual, the challenges that you see as a manager, and having that two-way feedback. I mean, from your perspective, Robin, how have you found? I know you use check-ins. You've used check-ins for years with your team members. What benefits do you find from having those weekly check-ins?
The key word is alignment. The main thing, if you're trying to make an organization great and you're trying to create a high performance culture and a high performance team, the number one thing you have to do is you have to give clarity on what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve that. And then, of course, as part of that is, what are people's roles as part of those goals? It's very hard to achieve greatness or momentum or growth if you're working on something that's unclear and you don't know what your role is in it. And you get that clarity by ensuring that cascades from the very top to the department, to the team, and to the individual. And then you have to use the check-in and these conversations to ensure that the people, not just on a monthly or quarterly basis, but on a weekly basis, are working towards those goals. And we've all had those moments. I'm sure you have, Andy, and many times in your career. I've had those moments where I get to Friday night and I felt like my week was so busy and I was just kind of working my butt off. But I don't really know if I achieved anything worthwhile because I was maybe working on the wrong things. I was just fighting fires. And so the weekly conversation becomes all important in calibrating that people are working towards the goals that really matter, because you get joy and fulfillment out of life and out of work if you feel like you're working on something that really matters. The worst is when you're like, I don't really know if I made a difference. Those kind of weeks really suck. And so the whole point of this kind of cadence is that to give people the confidence and the clarity that they're working on things that really matter, not just for themselves, but of course for the team and also for the business itself.
100%. And those weeks are okay, right? I've always found it when I'm doing check-ins with team members. If team members have somehow smashed it out of the park every week, it's almost unrealistic. It just can't be the case, completely. Right?
I still have those weeks where I'm like, oh, that was really busy, but I'm not really sure if I achieved anything. And it happens. We're human, 100%. Of course, right?
100%. And this is the opportunity to see, well, if it's been a few weeks like that, then is there something we can change? And can the manager support? Right. How can we move to the situation where actually we're working on the right things rather than getting maybe pulled into the business as usual too often or firefighting? And I think it's a great data point.
I also think it's changed with a new generation of workers. I actually asked on my LinkedIn. I have a decent amount of followers, so the responses were, I think, statistically significant enough to actually matter. So I asked, how often do you want to have a conversation with your manager about progress and goals and what you're working on? I asked, do you want to do it yearly, quarterly, monthly, or weekly? And by far, the majority of people said weekly or monthly. So this idea that you can leave it to a quarter or every year is completely antiquated. That's not what the
100%.
current generation of workers want. They want that. They don't, and the conversations doesn't have to be big or heavy. It just has to be small calibration so you know you're working towards the right things every single day.
100%. I think it's the key. It's really the key to that ongoing engagement. And then also, if you can have those frequent check-ins, of course, when it comes to those performance conversations, you've normalized that ongoing conversation, and you've also now got a lot of data really for yourself in terms of reflection when it comes to performance review or promotion review or whatever that may look like within your organization. If you've actually been calibrating and you've been reflecting on a very regular basis, you have that opportunity to actually reflect in an objective way rather than being affected by recency bias or anything like that as well. So I find that the check-in is really the power that pushes everything else in that process forward. And I think that's what it's all about. It is about that frequent reflection and keeping people on track. If you're able to stay on track, and as you mentioned, Robin, you get those weeks where things don't quite go as you expect, and you'll be off track from where maybe you're expecting. But if you get that feedback, you're able to actually have that closer alignment. So, when we see the stats that 79% of employees feel they don't get enough feedback, and also that younger generations are expecting more and more feedback, it really does put the onus on us within organizations and as managers and leaders to make sure that actually we're actually practicing that. We're really giving employees the feedback at the right time when they expect it, because that's the most powerful thing I think as a manager you have as a tool, is the ability to provide feedback.
And I'll also say, once I started adopting this mindset and started putting it into practice a few years ago, maybe it started, I would say maybe 10 years ago or a little bit, maybe 7-8 years ago, it also made me a better leader, because suddenly you show up in a way that's very supportive of the team that's working for you, in a way that there are no surprises. This is happening. How can I help you? What can I give you that you need? What skills don't you have? What resources don't you have? What can I do to unblock anything that's standing in your way for achieving? And if you find that out at the end of the quarter, then oftentimes I found, at least in my experience, those conversations become a lot more contentious. I've had it both ways, both with my team, but also with my manager, where it's like, well, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you tell me sooner that this wasn't on track, so we could have done something about you? And now by having these kind of lightweight weekly conversations, it just becomes, I can adopt a much more of a servant leader mindset, where I can help unblock, strategize, give you the tools, resources, skills you need, whatever it is that's blocking you to be successful. I'm on your side. And it's really a game changer.
100%. And then you've also got, when we talked about this on the, just a moment ago, in terms of goal setting and alignment through that, and making sure, whether you're using goals, whether you're OKRs, using OKRs is making sure that actually the work that we're doing is the work that matters to the organization. Of course, we want to be achieving human success at the individual level, but of course that should be aligned to where the organization is going, and setting that structure. And I think that the danger with goals and OKRs that I've always found is that people try and measure everything with them. And the most important thing about goals and OKRs is not actually so much the fact that you can get really accurate data and you've got this data dashboard that gives you your business's health. It's actually about alignment. It's making sure that the organization, the department, and the individual is in a way forced to prioritize the most important things. And I always say that 3 being the magic number for goals. If you can set 3 goals at each level, that will force you to think about the 3 most important things. Of course, you may want to set those quarterly or annually, and if you achieve them, of course, you can bring in another goal. But I think setting that kind of artificial limit really benefits you from a prioritization perspective. So goals is kind of that final part in terms of alignment. I think that the next element I want to talk about is around personalized experience, and the fact that you talked about the 3 generations there, Robin. Only the 3rd generation really is a personalized experience. In Gen 2, not everybody likes to play table tennis, for example. And in Gen 1, it is very much it was the ERP of HR, in the fact that you're running through a process. Whereas Gen 3 is about, when we talk about human success, is about personalizing and experience to you as an individual. And I think there's some really nice examples here around, what people say, that I'd like to know on a path to crushing my goals and becoming a best-in-class digital marketeer. I'd also like to lead a customer success team. How am I doing? What does my career path look like? It may be different to the person sitting next to me, even if they have similar aims. What are my preferences that allow me to do that? Maybe I've not attended college, but I think the skills I picked up at another job could actually be used in a sales role in a different organization. And then at some points our work-life balance becomes maybe more important than others. At sometimes maybe we want to work at 120% because actually we see a real opportunity, and at that time of my career that makes sense, and I want to do that. At other times maybe I need to pick up the kids at different times, and I need a little bit more flexibility. And this is all about making sure that we provide that personalized experience in a way that allows people to be successful in the way that is important to them in their career, but also in terms of the short term as well. And I think the starting point for that for us is around skills, and making sure we understand where our skills are today and what skills we need to achieve our ambition, really. And this is an example here actually from our own platform that shows you where you are today, and that feedback can come from your manager, and you can self-assess around the skills you're at today, and then we help close that gap for you. And again, we align those personal aims with those of the organization as well, and importantly understand those different learning preferences. I mean, Robin, from your perspective, if you were to sum up your learning preference, what would it be? Would it be going and doing a formal course or doing an in-person session? How do you absorb information and skill up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, and you touch upon something so important. One of the reasons I think why people are so disengaged, most companies treat everyone the same. And until you get to dig deep and kind of figure out people's motivations and ambitions, you're always going to miss a trick. I mean, in my 20s, I really valued becoming really good at something, digging deep and learning some core skills so I could be known for being the best of the best. And then in my 30s, it was more around, well, as I started becoming a manager, how do I learn how to manage people and do so at scale? And here, a little bit later now, I'm really thinking about how do I both grow a business strategically, but also inspire people to show up every day and do the best work of their life. And those are all different phases of life and require different skills to be able to do so. But the way I absorb information is also very different from how other people absorb information or growth. I am very much the kind of person who learns by doing, not just reading about something. I mean, reading can inspire me, but I preach about this a lot on LinkedIn and other places and articles I write. It's about actually doing something, and that oftentimes, of course, can lead to failure or unexpected impact or consequences of those actions. But you learn a lot more, I think, from doing than. So I'm a big fan of both listening, reading, experiencing, learning on in a way that's right for me, so I can grow my skill set. But ultimately, it's really around doing. But everyone's different. Some people, they love to just absorb themselves and then they practice in their head and so on. But for me, it's much about doing.
Me too. I jump in and kind of research when I need to. It has always been my kind of approach to learning, and that, again, that's the way I learn best. So yeah, 100%. It's all about that personalized experience, isn't it? And however that looks, it is all about providing that to your employees, whether that's formal, on-demand, experiential learning, providing equitable access as well. I think that's really important. So making sure that people have equal access as much as you can to the opportunities in your organization, and also that people actually have the experience of being delegated responsibility and stepping up, and also having that peer support is absolutely, I think, fundamental to that personalized journey. And we talk about formal on-demand learning in terms of how you provide that and how you're able to progress. And I think it's great to have some formalization around that. But as you say, those different preferences and making sure that people have different opportunities to access learning or to skill up, whether that's formal or on demand, or whether it's experiential learning. So making sure that actually you get those on the job experiences, which I think, as you said, is your preference in terms of getting those skills and I guess validating those skills in a different way than sometimes those courses. And then of course making sure you have that access and this is obviously a difficult thing sometimes in giving everybody the same opportunity. But I think as much as anything, from my perspective, it's about at least people knowing what the opportunities are, and maybe those opportunities, certain opportunities are only available, within certain parts of the organization or in certain functions or at certain levels in the organization. But when you have some transparency around that, it gives people the ability to actually understand what success could be for them and what the opportunities look like as well. So I think that's a key part to it as well. Delegation and peer support. We talked about this previously around how that can really level up. I mean, in your experience, Robin, have you seen your experience of kind of providing people with opportunities? I know that you've done this throughout your career. What's your view on the power, I guess, of delegation and giving people that organizational exposure?
I think it's all important. The truth is that any business, doesn't matter if you're a small business, medium-sized business, or a large business, you're working in collaboration and cooperation with others. And so being able to actually have much tighter relationships with those people around you will foster an environment of togetherness and belonging that allows you to both learn and grow from each other and utilize each other's skills, but also, of course, figure out where you have the gaps, and you can actually figure out then together what do you need in order to actually grow successfully together. And so I think around peer support, I mean, I'm 100% where I am because so many people around me, whether they have worked for me or been my peers or even been my managers, have been able to kind of lean in and figure out what can we do together to make sure that us coming together, the sum of those different people and parts and skills are greater than us individually. And this is a part of that. And we want to make that more visible, because right now it's hard to figure out, it's hidden. And in a remote first world, it's even sometimes harder.
Yeah.
But if you have the right tools and platform, you can figure that out very quickly, and you can actually optimize your team structures and team growth opportunities for maximum impact.
Yeah, 100%. I think it just becomes a superpower if you're able to wrap everything around with that coach, whether it's your manager, whether it's a peer. It just makes such a difference to somebody's opportunities to give them that exposure, that experience. So yeah, 100% agree. And I think we've talked about this really across the last half an hour. But this is about the ability to provide people the opportunities to have their own personal journey and what does success look like for them. And if you can align people to their own success and the success of the organization, that's where you get this sweet spot of engagement. So by personalizing that experience, you're engaging people not only with that process, but also with the organization. If people can see a future within the organization, they believe what the organization is doing is great, then that's when you're going to get that real alignment with engagement and ultimately success as well. And I think just to close off, because I know we're coming to time, but there are maybe a few steps that, if you're maybe not doing some of these things that we talked about today already, I think there are probably 3 top priorities which I would say should be top of mind. And I think the first is those simple, clear, transparent objectives and goals. If you can set those for the organization or the department or individual level, that will make a big difference to alignment. If you can embed some form of check-in process, feedback process, particularly between managers and employees, that will give you that cadence to make sure that people are continually engaged through the year. And then finally, personalizing those development opportunities and making sure that actually people's preferences are supported through what they do every day.
And in the words of one of the greatest founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs of our time, Richard Branson, he said it better than anybody else. He said, clients do not come first, employees come first. And if you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. And it's maybe one of the most overlooked insights, human insights that have ever been said out loud. So let's commit to each other that we focus on our employees first. And if we do that well, our clients will be taken care of. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you, Andy, for the great
Sure.
conversation, and I hope that was useful for all of you. Have a great day.
Thanks.